an art, not just a science. Money talks. Google is really looking for learn more and more. You have full control.
Hello, guys. Today, our new episode is about internal linking, and today is Emily with us. Emily, thank you for joining me today. Let me introduce ourselves. So, my name is Oleksandra. I'm a search specialist and enthusiast. I have an experience over more than 8 years, and I have an experience in big e-commerce projects. And today, I would like to talk with Emily about internal linking and how you can implement these strategies step by step for any kind of your project which you face with in your SEO journey. So, Emily, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Tell me, please, a little bit about yourself. How did you start your SEO journey? How did you become a SEO in general?
Sure. So I live in the States. I live in Massachusetts, just outside of the city of Boston. And I have been working in SEO since 2010. And I actually originally started out going to university. I was going to be a journalist. I was really focused on news reporting. But then in the States, the newspaper industry started declining at the same time I was in university. So I wound up pivoting. And one of my first jobs out of university was doing digital marketing. And then I wound up moving into a more SEO content focused role. And over the years at different jobs and doing different kinds of freelance projects, I began to learn more and more about the industry. So I've had my hand in SEO throughout a whole bunch of algorithm changes, really seeing how things have evolved over the years. And today I am most focused in helping businesses, primarily SaaS companies, but I do work with other types of companies, helping them understand how they can improve the content and the way the content is linked on their website in order to improve its SEO performance and bring more people in through organic search.
You said that you studied at a journalist. Do you have experience, especially in working as a journalist, like for a long time?
So I freelanced as a news correspondent, writing articles for newspapers on and off for well over 10 years. I ultimately decided to stop doing that around the time I fully launched my independent SEO business, which was in 2019.
I have an interesting question because
Sure.
a lot of sales are scaring of pitching journalists. So every time when I met people who has any experience in working as journalists, I ask them how we can pitch journalists in the right way.
That's a good question. So, my journalism work was more focused on local government reporting. So, I didn't get a whole lot of pitches from journalists, but I will say that as someone who has gotten pitches in the past in that work and also as my work now independently, sometimes I get pitches by people who would like me to feature them or feature their product. I will say that personalization is really important. And I know that that's something that you're doing at Collaborator anyway, but really making sure that it feels like I'm getting a pitch that you've sent to me, the individual. Like logically, I know you're probably sending it to multiple people or news outlets, but really feeling that I'm getting a personalized letter and not a sort of a generic form template that you've copied to multiple people, that really helps.
Like, hi, I hope you're doing fine.
Yes, yes. If it's customized to my name, maybe mentions a little bit about things I've written in the past, or something I do in my business, if I were to be pitched now, that's really helpful. Like, for example, I recently got two separate pitches asking me to work with a company, provide content, feature them. And one of them was really tailored to me, my name, my business, what I've done in the past. And the other started out by calling me sir. So that one was really not tailored to me. So I'm only going to be responding to the one that was very personalized.
Yeah, I still have some issues when I communicating with people, and I really spend a lot of time to make my pitches very personal.
Oh, I'm sure.
But people on the other side, they call me in so different kind of names, like Olga, Olex, Oleg. Like, ah, come on, just
Oh,
copy my name, please.
I know it's right
That's so
there, and
hard.
it's
I
Amen.
know. Maybe my name is too difficult. Okay, let's go to internal linking. Let's start from scratch. Please tell me in general how how does internal linking contribute to the overall user experience on the website, and why do we need to talk about internal linking?
Excellent question. So, internal linking is important for two big reasons. One, it helps with your SEO, and two, as you mentioned in your question, it helps with user experience. So, when a person comes to a website, they come on, say, let's say your homepage, and they have to navigate around and find more information. And the number of clicks they have to take to find the answer is called the click depth. So, ideally, we want to have people be able to find key vital information about our business or what we're selling within 1 to 2 clicks. It needs to be pretty easy to access. If key information about your business is buried in a way that it takes someone 4, 5, 6 clicks to find it, the likelihood that they're going to get frustrated and bounce from or leave your website goes up. So it really is important from a conversion rate optimization standpoint, too. You want to present yourself as a trusted resource so that you come up in search results. You want to present yourself as an easy to use resource through the user experience, making it simple for people to find what they're looking for. And you want to be selling as well, whether you're selling products or services. And the easier and more trustworthy you can present yourself, the more likely that is to happen.
You told that you're working mostly with SaaS projects, right? So, in case of such niche, how it's important and which stage you can recommend your clients who are working in SaaS or our subscribers when we need to talk with our clients about implementing the internal linking, because it's a classic stuff when client come to you with a beautiful design, like it's really so nice, but it's not about SEO, it's only about user experience, how we can make a friendship between design department and SEO department, because in most of cases, from my experience, designers do not know anything about SEO and search user experience. So how we can make a connection between this?
I would really begin the conversation talking about the conversion aspect of it. I mean, when you're working together, everyone's got a different function, but ultimately, the goal is to generate clicks and income for your company. So, I would talk to them about, what can we do? And here are some suggestions, I would provide to make the likelihood that someone would purchase something from us or carry out some other action. Maybe that's filling out a form, calling to schedule a demo. Make sure that that's very easy for them to access. That typically will involve tweaking some of the design, particularly around the headers and the footers of the pages, maybe the sidebar. Those are places where we're going to put links that are very consistent, maybe forms they fill out, key resources they need to access as part of this funnel. Putting them there. And that can, change the design a little bit. So there can be some friction, but really focusing on the end value and the possible return on investment to the company can really help. Money talks. Also, luckily, when it comes to internal linking, there's a lot you can do within the text of the page that won't it can influence the design, say, on a landing page. But if you're looking at more of your guides in SaaS, if you're looking at more of your user guides, technical guides, help content, you can do a lot with linking within the body of the text, and that has less of an impact on design. So you can maybe present that as a bit of a compromise, like, hey, I need you to do XYZ, but don't worry, I'll figure out another way to do these other links. But really, you're just going to put them in the text.
So what is internal linking?
It is just the process of connecting pages on your site, just making a link from one site to another. We talk a lot about external linking, and I know that's something Collaborator really helps people achieve. You've got so many resources for connecting with people at other companies, and that's wonderful. But while you're doing that, you also need to be focusing on internal linking. If you're putting a lot of effort into getting people into your site through external links, simultaneously focusing on internal links will help to make sure that when those people come to your site, they're able to find what they need and find it quickly.
especially in case of link building. It's so hard to promote landing pages sometimes in some e-commerce niches, for example. And in most of cases, even if you do classic free guest posting and does do not pay anything for backlinks, in most of cases, site will decline your link to landing pages. And in these cases, internal links really can boost and give you a great effort in case when you're linking from external websites to your blog pages or or some informational pages, let's say this. And these internal pages are linking to your landing pages or target pages. And it really works in a wonderful way because you promote your informational page, you get the links, and that internal page on your website, it's have internal links to your target pages. Ta-da! That's all. That's all. It's easy. I don't understand why sometimes SEOs are struggling with promoting only commercial pages. Why? Stop it, please. Just improve a little bit your internal links, and that's all. It's much more easier to promote your blog pages.
That's a really good point, and it absolutely is. And, through that process that you just mentioned, another benefit is that by making all of those links, you're improving the semantic understanding that a search engine has about your website. And by that, I mean you're improving a search engine's ability to understand that your website is about multiple things and those topics relate to each other. So by doing these links, you're not only improving it in the way you mentioned, you're also helping to reinforce with Google and other search engines that your site is an established resource on several different topics or entities. And that'll help improve your SEO in the long run and help. And doing this now helps create a stronger foundation for SEO so that when you do produce new content and put it on your site, it might perform better than it did before.
What about indexing? How can internal links can help us?
Yeah, so it's going to make the indexing process a little faster, a little easier. If you put a page on your website, let's say I put a new page on my site and I don't have any links to it or from it outside of like what's maybe in the header. You have to click you have to land on my homepage, you have to click on the blog, you have to click on a category, you have to find my blog post. So the click depth is pretty low. Now, Google will find those pages eventually, but the process can take a while. And you're not going to be resubmitting your sitemap for full indexing every time you put a new blog post up. That's over the top. So, what you can do is when you put a new page, whether it's a blog post or a landing page on your website, you want to make sure that it's linking to other already indexed pages on your site and make sure that there are links to this new content on those index pages. So if I write a blog post, maybe I'll look at it and say, okay, this is related to 2 landing pages and 3 other blog posts on my site. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link to this new content in that older content. And it's just helping create a better web between what is already indexed, what Google is already crawling and understanding, and the new page that you needed to find. It can help accelerate the process.
Perfect. And how we can do this process in general? What kind of techniques can we use to do it from scratch, especially for people who never work with this part of SEO?
Awesome. Well, I have a few slides that I'll go through that's going to tell you a little bit more about how that can work. So there's a few places to put internal links. You can put them in the headers and footers, the sidebars, landing pages, and within our long form content. But you need a few tools to do that. And there's some best practices that I've included in this slide. A lot of this dovetails with best practices for placing external links. So if anyone watching is already familiar with that process, this will probably feel pretty comfortable to them. A lot of the same things apply: using good anchor text, making sure your links are relevant, and not stuffing links. You don't want to put too many on a page. Be very strategic about it. But you do need a few tools to do it, and they're going to be different than the tools that you use for external linking. So a big one that you'll need for this process, and I want to make a side note, during this process, the process of doing internal links, you can make it as technical as you want. If you can do scripting, if you can build AI agents, there are ways that you can leverage those tools in order to make some parts of this more automated. But I wanted to present this in a way that most viewers, even if you're not very technical, would be able to follow along with and do. So, the first step here is to have a tool for internal link auditing. I use the tool that's pictured here on the slide, which is Screaming Frog.
By the way, do you know why Screaming Frog is Screaming Frog?
Oh, I don't know why it's called. No, I don't.
It's a funny story. I was really surprised when I knew it. So the founders of this tool, they were sitting somewhere in the yard, in the backyard of the house, and there was a frog, and the frog was screaming, and they like, wow, let's name it Screaming Frog. That's all. It's awesome. It's a really cool story.
Screaming Frog allows you to crawl up to 500 website pages for free. If you have a larger website, though, you would need a paid plan. There are a couple other tools you can try. One that I know a lot of people love and use, and I have used myself in the past too, is Sitebulb. This is a paid tool, but you pay for it on a month-to-month basis. So depending on how long your project is, you might find that's a little easier for you. Just buy it for a few months and then try something else. There's another tool called InLinks, which automates some more of the process. It's pretty expensive, but some people really like it. I've used this as well. It does have a good interface. And then you also need an SEO tool. I like to use SE ranking, which is pictured here. You can also use a tool like Ahrefs, and there are others on the market. I really like SE ranking personally. They're another tool that is made by a team in Ukraine, and they lay things out in a really easy to understand way. It's very colorful. I find that the reports are also really good for my clients to understand. So that's why I like to use it, but you can use the tool of your choice. I also recommend using Google Search Console in this process. So, if you already have Google Search Console set up, you can turn to it throughout the steps we're going to walk through today because it will show you what pages on your website are already getting clicks and impressions in search. It'll also show you what keywords your website is getting clicks and impressions for. If you don't have Search Console set up yet, that's okay. You're still going to be able to do a lot of what we talk about today, but you will want to go ahead and make sure you create a Search Console account during this process so that you have the data for future internal linking projects.
It's a good question to discuss about Google Search Console data
Mhm.
and any other external tools like you mentioned
Mhm.
before. So, what's your opinion about using zero keyword volume keywords, which we can found and discover by analyzing Search Console data? Is it is it good strategy, for example, for internal links, or do you prefer to choose by volume?
So for internal linking, I kind of look at it like like an inverted pyramid type structure. So I start with looking at the keywords and pages that are getting traffic. And I want to look at those because I'm going to place links to those pages on my newer pages or my pages that are underperforming or pages that don't have many links. And we'll talk about some of that criteria in just a few minutes. But then going forward over time, there can be value in creating links and even optimized content for keywords with zero volume, because just because that volume isn't there right now doesn't mean it won't be there in the future. If you can look at the trends that are happening in your industry and pick out keywords that relate to topics that you expect to grow in popularity, there can be definite benefit to that. There can also be benefit to creating internal links for and content around zero click searches. So maybe you're getting impressions for certain topics, but you aren't getting clicks. Say it turns out that you're in the featured snippet or you're appearing in one of the AI overviews answers. People are still getting information from your site. They're not always clicking, but you're still appearing in the search results. They're still getting exposure to your brand name, and making sure that you have those topics related to the rest of your site through links can still help you. So let's dive into the process. So right now, at this point, you've got your tools. You have a tool like Screaming Frog or Sitebulb, which is going to allow you to crawl the website in question. You have your keyword tool like SE ranking, and you also hopefully have Google Search Console, or you're setting that up. And the first step is to identify pages on your site that need more internal links.
How we can do this?
Going to do that by starting by crawling the website. Now, I'm showing you pictures from Screaming Frog, but you can also set this up in a tool like Sitebulb or another similar crawling tool. And you want to put your website into the tool and make sure that you're setting it up to respect robots text. This way, you're going to be crawling your site the same way that the search engines do. You're going to be focusing on pages that have potential to show up in search results. There you can decide if you want to link to pages that are no follow, but in this first stage, we're going to focus on pages that have potential to be indexed and appear in search results. And the crawl is an automated process. Whether you're using Screaming Frog or Sitebop or InLinks, you're going to go ahead and put in the URL, configure your parameters, like I'm doing here. I'm telling it I want it to respect the robot text file, and then go ahead and let it run. You can shut down the program. You can walk away from your computer, go do something else. It will index your site in the background, and that can take some time, anywhere from a few minutes to like an hour or more, depending on how large the site is. So you want to get that crawl started, let it run, and then when it's done, you want to open up the report that your tool has prepared that shows you all of the links on your website. So in Screaming Frog, there's a tab along the top here in the menu. I've got the little hand pointing down to it. You can click links, and this will show you every page that it's crawled on your site, and it will show you information like how many links come into the page, how many links go out of the page, and how many clicks does someone have to make in order to find the page. That's that crawl depth. It will show you data for external links too. So if you are doing any work on your external linking, you can look at that data as well. But it shows you all the metrics you need for figuring out which pages on your site already have a bunch of internal links and which ones do not. So you want to pull a few different reports, and you can do this through the filters. You can filter the data that your tool provides, or you can export it all and do this filtering in Excel or Google Sheets. You want to pull a report of all of your pages that currently have no internal outlinks. There's no links going from a page on your site to another page on your site. You want to pull a list of the pages that do not have any internal inlinks. There are no links coming into it from other pages on your site. You want to pull a report of the pages that do not have internal link anchor text. So there's a link somewhere on the page that isn't associated with clear anchor text. You want to pull those. And you want to pull the report of any pages that do not have very descriptive internal anchor text. So for instance, the tool I use, Screaming Frog, can identify, like, if you have, let's say you have pages where you have links, but it'll just say click here or view. It can find those, and you can pull a report of those because that's something we're going to want to change as part of our internal linking work. You also want to pull reports of any pages that have internal links, but they're labeled as no follow, and you want to pull a report of pages with high crawl depth. So at this point, you have 6 different reports, and this can be a lot of URLs. The process does take a bit of time to sift through all the data, but when you're done, you're going to have a much stronger foundation on your website. From here, we're going to organize the reports. So out of those 6 pages or those 6 reports, we're going to separate them into 2 groups. So you're going to have your reports for pages that you need to add links to, and your reports of pages that you need to improve links on. You can decide which you want to tackle first. It may be easier to start by improving some links that are already on your website, like giving it better anchor text or adding anchor text if it's like for some reason there's just like a hyperlink floating out there on a page. And then you may want to go ahead and tackle the process of adding new internal links to your site. There's no right or wrong. The order you choose to tackle these in can depend on your resources and what feels most attainable to you right now.
Can we also say about, for example, divide the processes of implementing internal links? Because in some cases we can do it manually by ourselves, and in some cases we can provide a technical task for our developers because we do not have access to CMS on the website, for example, for footer links, header links, etc., and do it in most of cases more automatically. It's also save our time just when we prioritize the sections on the website. Some of the parts, some kind of links can be added automatically for the whole website, and it's already a huge advantage for a strategy.
Absolutely. Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah, you don't have to do this, like you said, all manually yourself. You can give this to a technical team. There are ways to automate it, especially if you or someone on your team are comfortable with scripting and other forms of automation. And some of the tools that I mentioned, like one of them is InLinks. That one actually allows you to automate it like automates the process by connecting to your website, so it will place the links for you. Um, there are pros and cons to that. It is maybe a way for a smaller team to automate it. But yeah, if you have a larger team and a technical team, you can absolutely bring them into this process. And I have an example of a report later on in the presentation that is something you could copy and duplicate, pull, and give to your technical team that's going to just break down very clearly, here's the links we need, here's where we need them. Please do this. So the next step is to find the best pages to link to or from. So at this point, you figured out what pages on your site don't have enough links or don't have descriptive anchor text. So we have to figure out where are we going to link them. And this is where some of the other tools that we've talked about come into play. So the first step is to identify the top keywords on your website. You can do this with Google Search Console. You can also do this through a tool. I'm using SE Ranking in this picture. And for a lot of the examples I'm showing you, this is not one of my clients. This is the keywords and links and URLs I've pulled from boston.gov, which is the closest major city to me. So we're just going to use them as an example, but I haven't worked with them personally, just as an aside. So you want to go ahead and start looking for terms that are related to your site, scan your site in SE Ranking. They have a tool called competitor research. So you can actually put yourself in there and see what keywords your site is most closely associated with. Again, a lot of this information is also in Google Search Console if you have that set up. You want to look at this list and think, okay, are these the terms I want to be showing up for? Are there any that seem like outliers here? The ones that I like, do they have good search volume? I like to sort this by search volume so I can see, okay, which terms am I associated with that are performing really well. You can also look at terms your competitors rank well for and consider creating links on your site around those topics, which may help boost you in search results. Like if you can create a better sort of contextual map for search engines to show them what all the different topics you talk about through those links, that can help you be a little more competitive as well.
What to do in case if I have, for example, really huge e-commerce website for thousands of pages? Can you provide me a few recommendations how I can filter all of those dozens of keywords more effectively, um, considering not only search volume, but what else can I use in this case?
That's a really good question. So if you are working on a large product-based site, like an e-commerce site, starting with this keyword list is possibly going to be very overwhelming. In that case, I would actually turn more towards your internal site analytics, like look at Google Analytics, look at maybe you have Hotjar installed, another heat mapping tool where you're able to see more data about how people are interacting with your site. And in that regard, I'd look at not only the main keywords that you already have in your SEO plan that you're already trying to get your site to target for or to rank for, but I'd also look at what pages on your site are the most popular, what products are the most popular. You'll be able to see that in Google Analytics. You can also look in through a lot of other, if you're using, say, Shopify, they might have internal analytics that you can look at as well. So I'd start by identifying the most popular pages on your site. And you don't have to look at every single popular page. You can decide to group it. You can say, okay, what are the three most popular landing pages on our site? What are the three most popular category pages on our site? What are the 20 most popular product pages on our e-commerce site? And start there. You don't have to target every single possible link that you could make, but you want to start by identifying the highest traffic pages because we're going to start creating links from those high traffic pages to lower traffic pages and ideally bring more people to underperforming areas of your site. You want to take a look in Google Search Console if you have it set up, and also look at high value pages. And going back to our earlier example, if you're working on a very large site, particularly a large e-commerce site, you can also look in Google Analytics to see some of this. So I like looking at both the clicks and impressions. As I mentioned earlier, there are some sites that can benefit from zero-click searches, like especially if you're a site that provides a lot of guides, step-by-step tutorials, long blog posts, there is a likelihood that people are going to get your information directly from the SERP. So that's where impressions can come into play. People might not be clicking, but if you're getting really high impressions for a page, it shows that you are indeed like very closely linked to good search performance for specific terms. So I look at these pages, and the ones that are really knocking it out of the park in terms of clicks and impressions, I identify those as high priority for linking to pages on my site that have very few internal links, that have a very high crawl depth. So by doing that, we're going to take a page that's a lot of people see and link to a page that's harder to find. And that's going to reduce the crawl depth to that page and make it more accessible. Also, absolutely, if you have any orphan pages on your site where it's just kind of floating out there aren't any links coming in or out, those are rare, but they can happen. Definitely want to make sure that you are linking to those pages from these high performing URLs already on your site. You can also look in Google Analytics to see what pages have high conversion potential, and that's helpful whether you are an e-commerce site or not. We all have something we want to achieve as a conversion, whether that's someone buying a product, filling out a form, giving us a call. So you can look in Google Analytics, see which pages are achieving your conversion targets right now, and then you can link to those pages. Like you can take a page that has very few internal outlinks and link to that high conversion page and link, do a bi-directional link. So hopefully you're getting more people bouncing around your site and coming across those high conversion pages.
You just mentioned about conversions, calls, and some kind of other CTAs. Sometimes we have some really noisy clients who would like to track everything, every button, every event. So, how you can recommend all SEOs to answer the client requirements, add UTM links inside the website? How we can deal with this statement?
I am not a fan of putting a bunch of UTM links throughout the inside of my website. I usually will tell a client that we want to focus on really key data points. And when we have too much data, it creates too much noise and we're not able to focus on what really matters. So I keep the link tracking very specifically to conversion actions. So Google Analytics is great at coming up, and other tracking tools too. So like I'm actually a fan of a lot of Google Analytics alternatives, but all of these tools are great at tracking actions people are taking on your site. What I would recommend in this case, if you have a client who wants a lot of data, I would talk to them about keeping the actual tracked conversions very specific. Buttons to call, forms to fill out. Um, add someone adding something to cart and then leaving it in the cart, those kinds of actions. And then I would suggest the use of a heat mapping tool on top of that. That will, if you're not already doing that, it's not going to funnel all of this information directly into Google Analytics, but it will allow you to pull reports for the client to show them, hey, here's where people are focusing most of their information, most of their attention on a page. Here are pages where people are clicking and immediately leaving. And ideally, it will provide them with some more information without you having to wade through thousands of tracked links in your analytics dashboard. So there's another way you can find more targets too. So we've talked about, looking at Google Analytics, looking in Google Search Console, looking at if your CMS has an analytics dashboard, looking in tools like SE ranking. But if you're starting with a site that you're not familiar with, or it's very small, or it's been underperforming in terms of SEO, you can also use Boolean searches in Google to help you identify pages. So let's say I have figured out that I have a page about, in this case, restaurants, and I need a link. I need somewhere to link to this page. This page doesn't have links coming in and out of it. I need another page on my site that has something to do with restaurants, and I need to be able to put a link to this underperforming page on there. So you can type site, the website, colon, and then the term into Google, and that will bring up pages on your site that contain this term. So in this case, as an example, I used boston.gov and I looked for pages that had to do with food service and restaurants. And this brought me up a list of all the pages on the website that were related to those terms. So then I can pick, okay, this one looks good. It's easy to find. It has a low click depth. It's appearing in search results. I'm going to place a link to my orphan page or my underperforming page here. This method, because you don't have as much data around how the pages are already performing, It can result in accidentally linking two underperforming pages to each other. But again, if you're working on a site that you haven't really done much with SEO or you're very unfamiliar with, this can be a good way to begin finding information, begin creating links, and then you can keep revising your plan as you move forward.
Yeah, it's kind of really quick and easy test. Just place a link, you can index, wait for a few weeks and see if there are any movements in your search console. Yeah, great advice.
The next step is to take all of this data you've amassed. You've got your your pages that need links, you've got your pages that you want to that are high performing or appearing in search and you want to place links on those pages. This is where we do the prioritization. So, I like to sit down and build out two lists. I'm going to have my pages that need the links and what direction it's going to be. Am I going to link out from this page or am I going to link into this page? And then what page am I going to connect it to? Those pages that are performing well in search, or in our last example, pages that at least contain the terms that we need to connect topically to each other. And then I put them into a spreadsheet if I'm doing this in a very more non-technical way. And so this is something anyone can do in Google Sheets or Excel. You can share this with other members of your team, walk through it with them, and it's just going to have your page that you're starting with, your anchor keyword, where the text is located on the page that you want to place the anchor keyword, and a link. In this example, I've also added some additional rows for assigning a certain team to work on it, putting in a deadline, tracking whether or not it's done. This is a pretty basic way to do it. If you do have someone on your team who is more comfortable with automation, maybe they are comfortable with like the OpenAI API, other machine learning tools, there are some ways you could automate this process. You could look at building a form, even in something like Airtable, where multiple people on your team can go ahead and enter the links they've found, the links they want to place, anchor text, and it will develop a form for you or develop a spreadsheet for you to share with other people. This is one way that you can organize it. And you can pass this off to someone and it will be very clear, here's where the link needs to go, here's where it needs to be, and here's the link we need to use.
If you're working in a company or in an agency, please do not this job by yourself. It's really not effective because your working time is really more expensive. It's a work for content manager. Your task is just to determine, prioritize, set up your goals, put a workflow and manage. That's all. Because if someone asks you to do internal linking by yourself manually, doesn't work. It's too expensive.
Absolutely. And even in the case if you're one person working with a client on their website, this is something you can delegate to the client's team. You can, tell your client that going into the initial conversation about the project, but I'd frame it as rather than you yourself as an individual doing all of their internal links for them, you're going to provide them and empower them with the information they need to focus on better internal linking strategy over time. And ideally, your clients technical team will be able to take that on.
Once it's done, you just can crawl again your website by any kind of tools and just check it in a bulk if everything is fine. So it's pretty easy to check.
Yeah, that's the one really nice thing about it is very easy to check and see how this is performing.
What about indexation? So once we did it, for example, we did the wall project, or we can ask for re-indexing Google step by step. What technique can you recommend?
Once you've got this done, you can go ahead and submit your site map again through Google Search Console for reindexing. If you are connecting your pages to, like, let's say you have a handful of orphan pages or a handful of high crawl depth pages that you're linking to more frequently crawled, higher ranking pages, you may not even really need to go through that process. It will be picked up um, as Google continues to crawl and index your site, but resubmitting your sitemap can speed it up. If you don't resubmit your sitemap and you just wait for it to happen naturally, I usually wait at least 3 months to see how things are shaping up. It can take a while depending on the size of the site. So there's a few different approaches you can take. That one there's not one that's really right or wrong, but I would say if you are doing a major overhaul of your site and you are updating links on a ton of pages, maybe you're making other content optimizations at the same time, I would request reindexing of the site.
What do you think about the old trick with HTML sitemaps? Does it still work?
You mean like the standard HTML sitemap versus something
Yeah,
that's more dynamic right now?
yeah, like the static page
Yeah.
HTML and footer where people add some links and because I don't know, is it work? Because previously, like 10 years ago, it was working, but what about today?
Honestly, I'm of the belief that if you have a sitemap, regardless of how it looks, that's important. I mean, you don't need to. So, like, if we're talking about the actual sitemap file that's achieved by going to your site and opening it up in the URL, then they can appear in different ways based on how your site is structured and what kind of code your site is built on. Whatever you have there, I think it's a benefit. If we're talking about actually building out a sitemap on your site, like with clickable links, like people used to do, that's not really so beneficial anymore, in my opinion, because Google is looking for, like, sometimes I still go to websites where at the bottom it'll have a link to every single page on the site. At this point, Google is really looking for related topics. So that to me feels a little more like link stuffy. I would stick to placing, I wouldn't go through the process of basically building out a clickable sitemap on my page. I would only have the actual sitemap file associated with my site.
Last time, Google crawling became so slowly, so problematic. So probably the HTML sitemap it doesn't worth to create it. And also you can use API for
Mhm.
crawling for indexing. You need to be more technical one for this part of job, but you can ask, for example, your technical team or client's technical team. It's not so hard, or if you know basic rules of Python, for example, and with AI you can write your own script and just connect a JSON APK to your website. And but you should know that the limit is 200 URLs per day. So for small project, that's fine. If you have a big project, you need to manage multiple accounts to do this and create additional technical survivement. I don't know, just additional technical tools which allow you to manage your accounts. Like it's also good and it works. It works definitely, but it takes some more time, and you need to be more technical person.
Oh, absolutely. And if you're a technical person or you have someone on your team who's very technical, a lot of this can be automated and streamlined. So if you don't have a technical person on your team, it's good to find one. At this point, I also like to set progress goals. So, and my priority. So, if I'm handing off my list of URLs to someone else, I want to make sure that they are prioritized. Sandra, you already mentioned some of this, but like this is a lot for one person to handle. So think about your bandwidth, think about your team's bandwidth. How many pages in total have you identified as, needing new links? What is your team size? What is your available time that you have? And as you mentioned, you do want to hand this off to someone else. You do want to delegate this as much as possible, but also be realistic about your team size. Even if you're delegating it, if you have a lot of pages to update and you're delegating it to a fairly small team, this is going to be a longer term project, and that's okay. The benefits will start happening. Plus, maybe in a way that could be good if you are using the API to do the indexing, since you can only do 200 URLs a day. You know, do it step by step, batch by batch. In terms of priority, I would always say if you happen to have any orphan pages on your site, make sure those are getting links first. Next, I focus on the report I pulled of links that only have one link, internal link in or out of the page. Also, then look at high crawl depth pages. I would address those last out of the three there, but they are still important to address. And then ultimately, you can continue this linking project once you've made sure that all of your pages that really need links have them, or really high crawl depth. You can lower that crawl depth. You can also then focus on putting more links to and from pages internally that have high relevance to your business model, and continuing to optimize linking around pages that have strong conversion opportunities. And you can adjust this plan as you go. It's okay if you start and you realize that actually, you know what, maybe our priority list isn't quite right. Maybe we want to switch it up. You can adjust this as you go, as long as you're communicating internally with your team, and adjusting your timeline and your goals. Like, you have full control over this process, and you can shape it however works best for you and your colleagues.
How do you do it with your team exactly? For example, in my team, we have sprint for 2 weeks, but other teams have a sprint in 1 week. Oh,
So I am unique in that I personally am a one woman operation here. So I am preparing the information for my clients, and then I am training them on how to do this themselves as part of my strategy work that I do. So I'm ultimately handing it off to my client and then providing knowledge support if they need it, as their technical team or their web team goes ahead and implements. I do think that if you're working internally, like working in 2 week sprints, like you mentioned, is a great way to do it. I've worked on many projects, both linking projects and non linking projects, that follow that model. It allows you chances to stop and reiterate and make sure that your progress and your priorities are going the way you want. But yeah, I have a slightly different approach, given that I am providing more of training to my clients versus leading and doing the process myself. So now we want to talk about optimizing your existing content that you already have. So as you go through this process, you're going to need to place links on pages that already exist. Sometimes there will be a word on the page that works perfectly as good anchor text, and you can just pop it right in there. Other times you are going to need to be doing some editing and adjusting of the content on your page. If that is the case, it can help to, if you have your technical team making the links, it can help to bring in your content team earlier in the process so that they're helping you identify the best anchor text and where it should be, and making sure that content is on the page and it's ready to be linked. You want to make sure that your anchor text is relevant. Make sure you're using keywords as anchor text. So it can be tempting to like link a whole sentence, or I've seen sometimes people will, if they're linking from a page about restaurants to a page about food tours, they will choose to place the food tour link on the restaurant page, and have it be like something like, oh, tasty restaurants, because you click on it and you're like, oh, it's a food tour, we go to lots of tasty restaurants. You actually want to use the words food tour or our city's food tours or whatever, as close as you can get to what the title of the page you're linking is. That helps to make it really clear when search engines come and they're indexing, make it really clear how these topics relate. It also is great for the end user, because then they know exactly what they're clicking on. They see the word food tours linked, they're going to click on it
yeah.
expecting to see information about food tours.
It's a typical mistake, for example, if the website is on a WordPress CMS, and sometimes people use some kind of free plugins which allow you to add automatically internal links, but unfortunately it doesn't work properly. And you just set up this plugin and they link in really stuffy words, and you need to rework it. It really takes a lot of time then to fix all of those internal links. So please don't use internal links plugin until you don't understand how to set up it and automatically in a proper way.
Yes, more often than not, when I see a plugin in play like that, it is creating the most non-topical link text possible. So yeah, don't be afraid to rewrite some of your content if needed. If you're coming into a page and you're, first off, refreshing the content on your page is great from a content SEO perspective, because it helps keep things very topical, updated. It shows Google that you're still active on this page. It's still relevant. So don't be afraid to go in and refresh the content, rewrite sentences as needed. You can kind of tackle two problems at once if you have older pages that need links, but also maybe the content isn't very evergreen, it's got a date on it. You can go ahead and refresh that and bring it up to speed. And going back to what we talked about earlier, like I do check the links for tracking codes. Like, be very careful when you're just copying and pasting links. Make sure from your reports, make sure that you're not copying a link that contains a tracking code, because if you wound up sometimes like people are, especially when you're doing that thing where you're looking in Google and you're picking out pages that you have relevant terms like on your site that have specific terms. It's possible that you accidentally copy something with a tracking code at some point that you don't want to be tracking this new link that you're placing. So just make sure the links are clean. Make sure that if you are using tracking codes during this process, you're using the actual UTM code that you want to place there. Just take that time now to do that double check so you're not getting confusing data down the line. And remember, when you're creating new content on your site, whether that is refreshing a page that you're adding links to or creating a net new blog post down the line, always keep internal links in the plan going forward. If you're preparing briefs for writers, whether they're on your team or they're freelance writers, include suggested or even required internal links that they need to place on the page so that you don't have to keep going back and adding links to pages after they've been live on your site for a while. Plan out where those links should go. If you have a writer that you work with or a content team internally that that they understand how anchor text works and they understand where links should be placed, you can go ahead and let them have creative control over that. Otherwise, you may want to say, hey, put these links in, make sure you use these phrases for the link. You can be very specific. Providing people upfront with that information and making it part of your content brief template can help make this process a lot easier going forward. Set limits on your links per page. Again, we don't want to be stuffing. Generally, I would say, just like you might want to restrict your external links to 2 or 3, if we have, say, about 1,000-word blog posts, keep it about the same for internal links. And I'm talking about links in the text. You, of course, still have links in your header and your footer and your sidebar. Those are valid internal links. But when it comes to placing additional links in the text, if I have about 1,000-word blog post, I'll try to keep it to about 2 or 3 links. On a landing page with limited text, I might try to keep most of my internal links in the headers, footers, and sidebar, and then put 1 or 2 in the copy on the page if it makes sense. And it's helpful to train your whole team on internal linking and anchor text best practices because, if you've got your content team and your web team and your technical team all working on this, it's a good idea for everyone to be on the same page about what works, what tools you are and aren't going to use. That way you're getting more consistent results.
My favorite typical mistake of content team is providing internal links without canonical slashes, or without slashes or with slashes. It's, oh damn, it's so it's so annoying. So every time when I'm working with a client or in-house company, never mind, I create a special spreadsheet or presentation with like requirements, like just run it please, and I share with all of my team members, like, please follow these rules, it's really important. And once they, no, for example, they don't follow these rules and we have a conflict, and I can protect myself as a SEO because here are rules, here is my knowledge base, you seen it, you should follow it. If you don't follow, we will have a problem, unfortunately. But it's the most effective way to be in a warm relationships with your colleagues. Just protect yourself and prepare as much as possible any kind of knowledge materials, even videos. It can be even like a short film. What is your favorite typical mistake?
My favorite typical mistake would be just kind of similar to what you mentioned, where like that sometimes they're using the slash, not the slash, just placing a link without realizing that that it's not quite the right link or it has a code still attached to it. Like it's very easy to just oops, or even copying a link from elsewhere, putting it in the tracking sheet, and then missing part of the URL when you paste it, creating a broken link. There's just so many little things that can happen if you're not careful with the detail. And being very specific, as you mentioned, is important. I heard once, and I'm paraphrasing this, but basically, like, detail is kindness. Like, being very specific, some people feel that being too specific can be too overbearing, but being very specific up front makes the work so much easier for everyone in the long term. And I do love doing videos, like you mentioned video. In my case, since I am often providing guidance to client teams on this process, I love using videos so we can work asynchronously. I can show them the process. I can have something they can refer back to. So I'm a big fan of that in addition to like the brief template. And the next step is to just monitor and adjust your linking strategy once you have begun implementing it. And this is something that you can continue to tweak as you go. It doesn't have to be one time, set it and forget it. And you will also, as you go, you will become more comfortable with what is your brief template going to look like for new writers? What is your tracking system going to look like? What kind of sprints are you going to run? So doing this, if you're doing this, it's a good idea to, once you create the links, if you have keywords that you want these pages that you've now improved with more links to rank for, start tracking them if you aren't already doing so. Make sure that you are looking for changes in that rank. Watch your Google Search Console. Like I said before, if you don't have that set up already, make sure you do that during this process, because you're going to be able to see if new pages are driving any traffic to your site. Are impressions going up or down for pages that you've added links to? Are clicks going up? These are all things you want to look at so you can decide whether or not your link strategy has been working, whether or not you are gaining, like whether or not your site is being recognized for more topics, more entities, whether or not it's being recognized as a reliable resource in new areas, all of which links should be helping you. It's also a good idea to recrawl your site after you're done, again, using a tool like Screaming Frog or Sitebulb, and double check that click depth. We talked about part of the process is reducing the number of clicks it takes for someone to find information on your site. Go recrawl the site and look to see if that click depth has indeed changed. It is possible that during the process you might accidentally link one high click depth site to one high click depth page to another high click depth page instead of a low click depth page to a high click depth page. So check that. Make sure that you've created the right kinds of connections. If you're finding that there's still a lot of pages with a high click depth, see if you can add more links. You may also need to, at this point, revisit the way your site is structured, going beyond internal linking. But internal linking, when done right, can help reduce that click depth across your site. Here is an example of a site that I have worked on that I helped guide. I guided the process of the internal linking. So we see here, and I have anonymized this just to protect my client's privacy, but we see here on the top picture, there's a little arrow pointing down at June 2023. That is around the point at which we began the internal linking implementation period. And you can see that in a little more detail on the bottom graph as well. So what happened here is my client and I identified an internal linking plan for them to connect different pages based on topic, performance, and click depth. Worked with my clients that their team could implement this. And so we see around the point where it started in summer 2023, a year later, their impressions have doubled. And I'm calling out impressions here because my client in this case was someone who benefits from zero-click searches. We've actually taken steps to optimize them to appear in the featured snippets, which can often lead to a zero-click search. I am optimistic that they're going to be appearing in AI overviews going forward as well. So impressions are valuable for them. It helps build their brand name, and you can find them on multiple channels. So that's very helpful for them. So as we see here, their impressions have just about doubled, and their average position improved by 4 spots in that time frame as well. So they did do some new content creation. They do regularly create content. They have made some new blog posts during this period, but the links, they were making content already. So the improving the links and being more specific about how they're linking and the keywords they're linking has helped them double their impressions over time. And we can see that their traffic has gone up as well, from less than 65 visits per month through organic search to more than 250 visits. And this was a small site, so I'm very pleased with that progress.
It took for your client, about 3 months, the whole summer, to implement the full process of internal links, right?
Yeah, small team, a lot of links. They took their time with it. This was something for this site where we had the ability to take some time with it. It wasn't something they had to do immediately. But had this been a larger team, we were able to do it faster. I expect we would have seen returns faster
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, it's a good result, even if you
Yeah.
don't have enough budget for a website for external links or
Mhm.
link building campaigns. Internal links can really provide you a good effort.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just helps build out that topic map as well. Like, it helps them be recognized for additional entities in search, which is I'm really excited to see how this continues to help them as AI overviews roll out more and more too.
And the most important part, that once you set up internal link process, you can forget about it. I mean that you don't need to really spend a lot of time, because your main goal is just set up processes clearly, teach your team or your client's team, provide all the knowledge, and just provide these rules in content writing. By the way, do you provide every time in outlines for blog post the recommendations with internal links, or team knows already how to work with it?
It depends on the client. Typically, yes. If I'm providing full blog posts outlines for their team, I will provide the internal linking suggestions as well. If I've worked with the client before, like on an internal linking project, and I know that their team is up to speed on how this all works, then we may not. But it really doesn't add too much to the briefing process for me, because I already have templates in place. So yeah, I do like to provide the internal links.
And what do you think about the context of internal link? I mean, there is a common myth that we need to provide the target keyword, the target internal link in the first paragraph, and for example, in some other cases. But do you provide, for example, in your outlines, the right context where this link should be placed? For example, we have a paragraph about the best restaurants in London. And in this case, in this paragraph, the internal link to related page is the best place. Or do you provide a total freedom for writers?
So I will provide the anchor text that should be associated with the link. And that typically will kind of fit itself. Since I'll provide the anchor text, there's only so many places it can usually go in the outline. So that's about what I do. I don't specifically say they have to use it in a certain paragraph or a certain spot on the page. There is some conversation about, how much does placement relate to it. I personally am actually not a fan of putting the internal link in the first paragraph, because it can sometimes pull people away from the page once they've landed on it. So there are pros and cons to both. I typically will provide the anchor text contextually. There are usually only a few places that could then fit in the outline, and then I let people take it from there. If I then am involved, if I'm still involved in the project and I'm seeing the end result, and I'm seeing that maybe all the links are grouped really tightly in one spot, I will tell them they need to separate them. That's something that I find is really more addressed in training, making sure that the recipient of the brief understands the core best practices for linking. And that's another spot where a video can come in handy, because you can film a video of yourself if you're working with other writers or writing teams. You can film a video of yourself walking through the best practices as a refresher of where links really should be going on a page, and you can include a link to that video on your brief, so just as part of your template, so that if someone needs a refresher at any point, they can click on that and get feedback without necessarily having to wait for you to be online to ping you and have you walk them through it. And then as you are tracking and hopefully seeing results, you can continue to adjust your strategy. You might want to tweak your anchor text if you find that you're ranking for new terms without the right search intent, or if you find that you've created internal links, but you're like a tool like Hotjar is showing you that people are clicking on that new link and then leaving the page. There's a disconnect between what people are expecting and what they're finding. So you may need to change the page you're linking or tweak the anchor text to make it more clear about what they're going to see once they click on the link. You can also consider revamping more of your content that you've added links to if traffic volume and keyword rank isn't improving over time, or if a previously high value link starts to fall in the SERPs. You may want to go back in and adjust the links and adjust the content as well to hopefully recoup some of that SEO performance. It is an art, not just a science. There is a lot of testing and tweaking and reiteration involved in this process. But like we've talked about a little bit before in our chat, like this is a hump you have to get over. But once you do, it's going to be a lot easier going forward to maintain and adjust and continue internal linking. Sort of you have to just do this, and it's a bit of a slog, but you have to do it. And then once you get through it, it's going to be a lot easier and simpler to maintain. Today is that you must always remember to redirect during this process. If you are removing a page, editing the URL, changing the subfolder, migrating to a subdomain, while you're working on your internal linkings or really at any point, you have to remember to set up redirects. This is something that I see getting missed a lot on sites. So if you go through all of this work, all of these weeks, maybe months to update your site and put all these great internal links in place, and then you change the structure of some of the pages on your site, or you migrate to a subdomain, all of those links you've just created have now broken, and they no longer have the same value that they did before. In fact, they're detrimental now because people are just coming up against 404, 404, 404. So make sure that you're always redirecting. And if you're going to be redirecting a ton of links in one go, you may want to revisit your internal link strategy and make sure pages include some that aren't redirects. I think it's nice to have a mix. So just make sure you're doing it. Make sure you're aware of 301 versus 302. That's a whole conversation for another time. But I just would hate for anyone to find that their hard work has now been impeded.
I have a great example regarding this. So I had e-commerce in multilingual website in Europe, in really high competitive niche. It's really high competitive. It's about medicines for men,
Mhm.
and so the product team decided without considering with us that they just remove a few products which were just Emily, just imagine they were in top by high volume keyword, and then they just decided, oh, we don't want to sell it anymore, and they just deleted,
Oh no.
and even they didn't notify me
Oh
at all.
no. Oh
I just
no.
I just figure it out. How is ask me how I did determine this. So I just saw that my website clicks are going down, and I lose really high competitive keywords which are in the top, and I'm opening the page and it's 404. That's all. I asked, okay, why? But why? So in this case, so what to do? First of all, cry, then drink, drink a cup of coffee, then ask for a call with your management, with your stakeholders, business decision makers, and yell at them. No, not yell, I'm joking, but of course you need to teach even sometimes your boss, your stakeholders, how you should do it. And it's not a problem if the business decide to stop selling some kind of product, but in this case the right way was to provide a redirect to a relevant category or another kind of this product, another kind of modification of this product, or not to homepage but for category pages, or sometimes we can make redirect for, I don't know, blog page about this product. So you can decide whatever you want, but the huge mistake what was that the team provided 4004 and we had a lot of internal links and we lose a lot of traffic. And of course I was upset because I like beautiful traffic trends, and so yeah, it was really awful, and then I decided to quit that company.
I feel that so deeply. I used to work on some large e-commerce sites, and yeah, similar instances. It is.
Yeah, and please write in comments if you had some kind of these situations.
I would love to hear it. That wraps up the slides I had prepared for this, so I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have them, but or do you want me to answer? But thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful, and I really hope that there are some folks do leave some comments about some similar experiences they've had, or you know questions they might have. I'm just really excited to see what anyone has to say.
Thank you, Emily.
You're
Really,
welcome.
thank you a lot. I think that this guide will be helpful for our readers and subscribers. If you're facing with internal linking for the first times, this is exactly a video which help you, and it will guide you step by step how you can use and how you can build the internal linking processes. Yeah, and that's all. And we wish you good luck. But I have a few closing questions for you.
Sure.
Just a few inspirational questions to Emily. What some of the biggest challenges you faced in your career as a SEO, and how did you overcome with them?
So my biggest personal challenge was I had decided to leave my in-house SEO job and go become self-employed in September 2019. And then in March 2020, sorry, here in the US, we had our lockdown related to
Mhm.
COVID-19. So I had only been in business for about 6 months. And at the time, I was actually not working with a bunch of SaaS companies. I was working with more local agencies and companies related to tourism. So I wound up losing almost all, except for one, of my clients overnight due to the effects of the pandemic. And I certainly wasn't the only person who experienced that, but it was a wake up call for me that, in terms of being um, self employed, running a business, I needed to, one, diversify the types of clients I was working with, and two, look at some that were not location dependent, that were going to be more um, on the cloud. They're online. So making that change wound up giving me some more security in my business, but it also just opened me up to a new industry that I find fascinating. Like, I love technology and software and answering questions, helping answer questions through SEO. So that's just been it was a hard time, but it wound up being a really good pivot that I took for multiple reasons.
So what the last recommendation can you give to all of sales who are struggling with Google updates, who feel depressing after decreasing of their traffic, how to be on a rock when you feel depressed or when you feel burned out with this routine work as a SEO, how how we can be better?
That's a really good question, and I'm certainly not immune to that myself. I feel stressed out at times by all of the Google updates. I feel stressed out by the AI changes that are happening. Um, but one thing I try to always remind myself is that changes are constant in this industry, like continual. There were things we were stressed out about 2 years ago that we have now adapted to, or have turned out to actually not be that big of a deal after all. And, one of the things that has stressed me out the most in the past year is the AI overviews, and how is that going to change search, and how is that going to change content in search, and how are we going to track, you know, how well we're performing if there's more zero click searches. And um but then, within the past few months, and I know AI overviews aren't everywhere yet, but they are on some browsers in the US, Google actually wound up rolling back that to a degree. It now appears on about 66% less search results than it did before. So even though I have to remind myself, and I think this can help everyone, is when we're told things and all the industry publications are saying this is happening, this is the future, nothing is set in stone in SEO. It always changes and it always evolves. And so I just try to just ride the wave as hard as it is. Um, and for anyone who's feeling very discouraged about actual declines they've seen on their site, not like the hypotheticals I'm talking about, but if you're actually seeing stuff declining on your site and you're feeling burnt out, this can be a time to step back and reevaluate the process. Like, you might be feeling burnt out because you're grinding away at this in a way that's no longer working. So it can be helpful to take a step back and give yourself some breathing room if you're able, and really reevaluate. It may actually turn out that you can make your process more livable, make your process a little better in ways that support you and your well-being while improving at the same time. All in all, just know you're not alone. It's Everyone's stressed about something all the time in SEO, I think. But I just try to really focus on the fact that things that seem to be a big deal a year ago aren't always a big deal a year later. So,
Thank you for
you're
coming. So
welcome.
subscribe
Thank
to
you for having me.
Emily. If you need any help with your content, you know what to do. We will add link to your website and your
Thank
social
you.
media. So follow Emily, and I will see you in next episode. Have a
All right.
good day. Bye.
Thank you.